Good afternoon, everybody. 2:45. It's 2:44. Actually, I'm a minute early. So I'm going to give this a second, and I want to talk about this House Bill 2827. It was good times today, all good times. I hope those of you that had the opportunity actually tuned in and listened to that. You probably haven't listened to many committee meetings before, and it was I'm hopeful that you learned something from watching that, because there was a lot to be learned by what just happened today. So I'm going to wait one more minute until it's 2:45, and then we'll get started. If you type it on the side, though, type over there if you guys actually watched that today. I'm interested to know what your thoughts were about what your experiences of watching that committee meeting. Let me get my trying to find the notes. All right. I can't see the chat, but it's over there somewhere. Oh, here it is. All right. Never missed. Okay. You missed it. Been listening off and on. I watched it and was present at the courthouse, Allison said. Watched some, but had to homeschool my son. Okay, that's fine. So there's a lot of different ways to unpack this, because, again, when people were asking me, well, Tom, what's the purpose of submitting 48,000 witness slips when we knew they were going to ignore them? And I'm like, there was a huge purpose for that. And there's lessons to be learned in everything. And we often learn the most valuable lessons when we lose versus when we win. That's really most of the time we learn our lessons when we lose. But this House bill, again, on this homeschooling bill, there is no doubt whatsoever that this bill is being pushed by the teachers union, by the Illinois Federation of Teachers, IEA, the NEA. They're absolutely the ones that are pushing this bill. It's not even a question, you guys. This Miss Costa Howard, this Democrat hack that just presented this, sponsored this bill and was taking these questions, because she's just a pawn of the teachers union. That's all she is. Very unkind pawn, I might add, because she was extremely nasty, unprofessional, disrespectful, condescending, curt. Put any adjective you want. This lady met them all. But keep in mind, she's just a pawn sitting there taking the heat, because it's not her bill. Every time there was a real question asked, and I'll talk about a few of those in a second, every time there was a real question asked, what did she do if you were watching? She deferred to the ISB attorney, the Illinois State Board of Education attorney, because the Illinois State Board of Education, you guys, is nothing but an extension of the teachers union. They control it all because they have the money to control it. So that's why she couldn't answer the substantive questions. All she would do is sit there and get all boo, boo, hoo, hoo, and, all worked up when somebody challenged her, because she thinks what she's doing is saving man from ruination. So that's why she couldn't deal with the substance, because she doesn't understand the substance, because she's just a pawn. Okay. But nonetheless, that's what we had. Now, I want you guys, a few of the things I want to point out. And you've that I have been fighting years against the teachers union. Any Republican that takes money from the teachers union, there's no mercy coming from me. And you just got to experience today why that is. Because what you just experienced today is what that organization is all about. That's all they're about. And taking their money and in any fashion being a part of that is just abhorrent to the Republican electorate. That's why after today, there should be no doubt in your mind that no Republican should ever take 5 cents from the teachers unions. Miss Costa Howard, the lady that you just heard give this whole rigmarole, she's taken over $400,000 from the teachers unions. Over $400,000. The other lady that was leading it, the chair, Michelle Mussman, she's taken about $250,000 from the teachers union. So they're just perpetuating what the teachers union wants. And that's where, again, this bill's coming from. They don't care about 45,000 or 50,000 or 150,000 witness slips. And that's why I wanted you guys to experience this, because you doing what you did, getting 48,000 witness slips in 24 hours is unprecedented in this state, probably in this nation. And that's admirable. But you need to understand that when you're dealing with these human beings that are running this state, they don't give a shit. They don't care. And that's what you needed to understand. The only way that they're ever going to care is if you beat them in an election. That's all that's going to matter. So this is a pretty bold move on their part to put this bill forward. Pretty bold move. I'm going to come pick on the Democrat or Republicans just for a little bit. You know why the Democrats are so bold in Illinois? Because the Republicans don't fight them back. You heard today, Miss Amy Ellick did a pretty decent job. She's a state representative for the Republican Party. Amy is the minority spokesman in this committee. Amy did a pretty decent job overall. But if you were listening close, there was a couple of things that were said that were worth mentioning. Miss Costa Howard, the sponsor of the bill that no Republican that was listening likes, was talking very fondly about how her and Amy really can come together and have these conversations and talk about this stuff. Guys, I'm sorry. There's no Republican, no self-respecting Republican that's cutting deals with that woman or having, negotiating conversations with. There's no negotiating with that. You don't have to be disrespectful, but you got to say, look, we're so far apart, we're not going to be working together. I'm not crossing the aisle with you on that kind of stuff. Okay? So the fact that Amy has some kind of professional relationship, that woman, was a little concerning to me. But again, overall, Amy did a pretty good job asking a few decent questions. So this bill, they try to say it's about keeping kids safe. Remember, they were trying to, we got to keep kids safe. Guys, this bill has got nothing to do with keeping kids safe. Let me give you an example. Let's say parents have to fill this form out. And they fill out this declaration and they put all the little pretty crosses and bows and everything in it. And they send the damn thing to the principal, and the principal turns it in and it gets turned in. You know what's going to happen? It's going to sit there. It's just going to sit there. Nobody's going to do shit. Okay. But they will have your information, which is all they really want. They want to know how many kids are out there that are in this pool of homeschool and where they're at. So that's a target for them. And here's how they're going to come at you in a little second. But they're not going, as far as safety, there's going to be no safety mechanism at all. There's going to be no enforcement of any of that. They're not going to use that to keep kids safe, because if a parent turns it in, how does that connect to the child other than knowing where the child lives? They're not going to go monitor to make sure things are going on. It was all BS about keeping kids safe. Here's what it's all about. They want to put this in place to start gaining control over the curriculum for these children, first and foremost. They want to control the curriculum. And why the ISB lawyer is saying, oh, we just want reading, writing, arithmetic, blah, blah, blah. I think Blaine or Adam called it out correctly. It might have even been Mr. Swanson that were talking about, well, you can just change the curriculum without legislative oversight. And they try to say, oh, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. And Adam or Blaine even said, yeah, you guys have a lot of credibility at the ISBE. But think about that. They could add critical race theory. They could add DEI initiatives. They can add any kind of crap they want as required. And this law would, as it's written, force families to have to teach that crap. And if you don't teach that crap, your kid's going to be truant. Keep in mind, that's how they want to enforce this whole mechanism. This whole mechanism, they want to enforce it through a truancy law. So if your child, if you don't comply, your child's subject to being truant and being a criminal complaint potentially. It's absolutely ridiculous. So this is a slippery slope bill to open the door, because it doesn't further the purpose of keeping kids safe. It just doesn't do that. It doesn't further the purpose of making sure that kids are getting the right curriculum, etc. Because again, once this information is gathered, and I think Amy did a pretty good job of dealing with the resources and the practical issues. Once they gather this information, assuming everybody complies, right? Is anybody going to comply? I can't ever tell people to not follow the law doing what I do, but what's the consequences if you don't comply? I don't know. It's kind of like the gun registry. Remember the assault weapons ban registry that, 1% of the people in the state registered. What are they going to do? They can't do a damn thing about it. You know, I lost all mine in the Great Flood of '93, so I didn't have anything. But with this, once they get those names of these children and they know where they live, etc., that's the starting point for them to start honing in, because ultimately they want your kids in the public school system. It's what the teachers union wants. The teachers union doesn't give a crap about keeping kids safe. They don't give a crap. They want to maximize the benefits to their union members. That's their whole purpose. And so they want your kids out of homeschool and they want them into the public system because they get more money. If this was really about keeping kids safe, there's hundreds of thousands of kids in the public school system that aren't safe and are subjected to these problems. Why don't you go help them before going to the homeschool kids? So again, it was all a pretext, you guys, but it is what it is. So the 48,000 witness slips, I knew they weren't going to have an impact, but we were still pushing it for the purpose of what I want you to know. Your elected representatives in Illinois, your Republican elected representatives, you got 40 of them in the House, you got 19 in the Senate. That's 59 people. 48,000 of you just submitted witness slips and they blew you off. Do you think that the Illinois Democrats give two shits about 40 House members and 19 Senate members? No, they don't care. They do not care at all. And the mere fact that our 40 House members, I'm going to, you know me, I'm always on the House. I'm not on the Senate much, at least this month. They're just controlled opposition and they don't fight back for you. Leave today out of it. We had a couple of decent fighters today, including Amy. Wasn't bad. But overall, they don't fight hard enough to cause enough of a stir in the Republican electorate, right? I would ask you to consider, just consider this. Let's say we didn't have 48,000. I think my daughter just got home. Sorry, I was looking that way. If we didn't have 48,000 witness slips of families across this state, let's just say this bill didn't get that attention that you all have given it. You know, remember when Tony McCombie said yesterday, you know, thank the 48,000 or 38,000 at that time family members for following me. And I was pissed. And I'm like, nobody following you, Tony. And not a damn person following you. How, you know, how vain was it to her to say, you know, you're following me? Nobody freaking following you with nothing. But these Republicans are they just get walked all over all the time. They get thrown a little bit of scraps of money and then they be quiet and they don't really raise a ruckus. And they're only raising a ruckus today because you guys are so pissed that they don't have a choice. Otherwise, they're trying to get along and, you know, oh, we'll vote for this bill for you. We'll vote for that bill for you. And it emboldens the Democrats to keep doing this stupid crap because there's no risk to not doing it. Does that make sense? And so what can we learn from this? One, we'll see how this House Bill 2827 plays out. It's probably going to get passed and put into law. We'll deal with it then. But to the extent we're really pissed about that, we're freaking pissed. I need you to consider paying more attention to what I've been talking about for the last year now is we got to win freaking elections. And we got to win elections by getting more votes. And we get more votes by quit coddling the freaking Democrats and being their buddies and turn against them and say, we're going to fight you every freaking step of the way until we win. We're not going to give in. We're not going to cave in. We're not going to play games with you because it doesn't work. And I'm going to give you an example. Do you remember when President Trump gave his speech? And every Democrat House member for the most, and even Senate, sat there and never said a freaking word and never applauded him to really of any extent. Even when there were some people like the young boy who had cancer, the young girl that got hurt in volleyball, they don't do anything to show support because they are not going to do anything that pisses their base off, right? Does their base care about the boy that was ill and the girl that got hurt? Of course they do, but they're not going to let them clap under those circumstances because it would be giving President Trump some kudos, and they're not going to do that. So those people sit there quietly, and they don't say a word when President Trump's talking. We got to be the same way in Illinois, you guys. We got to be the same freaking way. We don't ever work with them on a bill. We don't ever say we'll come across the aisle on a bill with you. I don't give a damn what it is. We're going to fight you, and we're going to be against you every step of the way. Because we're going to go out here and we're going to win elections. We don't want your damn money. Teachers union, take your money and stick it up your rear ends, proverbially speaking. We don't want it. We'll go find our own money from people that believe in us, because we're going to fight, and we're going to figure out how to beat Katie Stewart, and we're going to figure out how to beat the Costa Howards of the world, and we're going to go get more votes because we're going to excite people into winning. That's the only thing that matters, guys. And the only thing you should have learned from this whole thing today is that your voice, even as loud as it is, and it's much louder than the Republican Party, your voices are exponentially louder than the 40 people in the House and the 19 in the Senate. But the Democrats don't care, because you have not been able to figure out how to harness that voice that you all have and turn it into election success. Once you can turn that into election success, it'll matter. And that's all I've been trying to do, is figure out how to get you to channel that energy that I can feel from the 35 million, contacts I have a month. I can feel that energy. How do we harness it and we go win? Tony McCombie is not interested in that. She's just not. And she's proven it by her behavior. Can she turn the corner? Maybe. She hadn't yet. Noreen Hammond, she doesn't care, right? I can start listing them down the list. Charlie Meyer, he sure doesn't care, because there's no chicken associated with it. We got to beat these guys in the elections, guys. That's what we're going to be talking about for the next year, year and a half, is how do we win elections? Which elections do we look at? Can we win them? How do we get more votes? Because that's how we ultimately defeat bills like 2827. The witness slips was a good thing. Don't quit fighting about this bill. Once they pass whatever turd they want to pass, maybe it's illegal and maybe they'll have to be sued. We don't know that yet. It's premature. But ultimately, we got to beat them at the ballot box, okay? Let me look and see. Oh, you guys are pissed today. No, Joe, witness slips are over. Brittany says, I was surprised to see Dan Swanson ask some good questions. Dan did a pretty decent job today. I don't disagree. And I'm not going to talk about Dan one way or another, but I'll just say, Brittany, it gets a whole lot more compelling for your elected representatives to fight when they know you're watching, right? When they know you're watching and they know you're pissed and you know you're not going to take it, they'll all fight. I mean, look at all of them now. Look at Charlie, look at Tony, look at the Illinois House Republicans, look at the others. They're standing up there in Springfield with these homeschool families, taking pictures. We're fighting for you, and I kind of smile going, okay, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Keeping in mind that many of them, like Tony, like Charlie, and like Noreen, some of their biggest financial contributors are the people that are putting this bill through. What do you want to make of that? Again, I'll use my guy, Charlie, my boy, Charlie. His biggest financial contributor in his political career is the very people pushing this bill. So Charlie is in part responsible for this getting to the point that it's got to, because if he would have quit taking their money a long time ago, if he'd have started fighting for Republican ideas and standing up to the Democrats, maybe over the last 13 years he's been in office, he might have done some good, versus now he's just controlled opposition and a pawn who takes a convenient picture with some homeschool families when he thinks it might suit him. That doesn't make up for the 13 years of money he's taken from these people, and he's helped them every step of the way, but he can't help them now because you guys are watching. So I hope that makes sense too. Watch a few more questions. You guys are blowing it up over here. Oh, Tiffany makes a good point. You guys heard about the bill they're trying to pass where they're trying to change how history is taught. They want to cancel all the current history books, and then they want to bring in new history books that are all DEI nonsense. Think about that. That's a very good point, Tiffany. If this homeschool bill passes and they have these requirements of what you're supposed to be teaching, is the new DEI history book going to be required and you can't teach the old history book? That's a fair question. I don't know the answer to that. Robin says she's moving to a different state. I ain't freaking moving. I ain't dead yet. Let's see here. Man, you guys are on fire. Okay, I think that's it. So there you go, guys. We'll keep watching 2827. We'll see what happens. Again, just don't think it's likely not going to pass. It won't get full Democrat support. That's another one to point out. If you saw today, there's a committee. This education committee has 9 Democrats, 4 Republicans, based upon the composition of the legislature. One of the Democrats that's on that bill is none other than Katie Stewart, or on that committee is none other than Katie Stewart. Katie Stewart is down here in the Metro East area by me. She's not my district. Charlie Meyer's my rep, but Katie's like right next to us. Katie's in a tough district because we will win that district and put a Republican in that seat sometime real soon. Katie knows that. And so what did they do? They took Katie off the committee and put somebody else on the committee so Katie didn't have to vote. Because see, Katie doesn't want to vote no because she'll piss off the teachers union. They can't let her piss off the teachers union. You can't vote no as a Democrat, right? They needed every Democrat to vote. One voted present, but that's okay. But they couldn't have had one voting no. And she didn't want to vote yes because that'll piss off all the people in the district that she lives in, because she lives in a good, reasonably conservative district that will be a Republican soon. So they sucked Katie Stewart off of that committee and put somebody else in her place. Those are the kind of games that they play, you guys. And they did that with Katie. I thought I'd point that out to you. And Abby's right. That committee had already decided how it was going to vote before they got there, because the IEA, Teachers Union, the ISB, the Illinois State Board of Education, who again is an extension of the IEA. It's just that simple. They all act in concert together. They had already planned. They knew the vote was going to be, they knew that Katie, and there was another one of the committee members that also got pulled off by Speaker Welch. There were 2 of them, Democrats, that got pulled off the committee, and they put in temporary replacements because those people couldn't vote in favor of this bill. It would have crushed them in their district. So they played the game and pulled them off. That way they were able to have their 8-4 vote that they had with one person abstaining, which was State Representative, I think, Crespo. I don't know him, from up north, that voted present. Yeah, it's all a big shill. Somebody said, you need to take Charlie's place, just being there with a loud voice. I was talking to Blaine. Blaine and I were texting each other a while ago. Blaine did a pretty good job talking. You could tell that this Costa Howard was not a fan of Blaine. And I started laughing. I said, could be worse. She could have to deal with me. Because again, I do that for a living. I dig in and ask people questions that they don't like just to get under their skin. That's what lawyers do. And I was sitting there myself and I was like, man, if I could have been asking this lady questions, it would have been a whole different ball game. But, Blaine did a great job. Adam did a good job. Again, Amy did a good job, pretty well. And Dan, not so bad either. But ultimately, like I said, they're just making a record because that bill was going to be passed, or that coming out of committee in 8-4, 9-4, no matter what anybody said. It didn't matter what they said. It was already going to happen that way because that's what the teachers union was demanding. And again, I'm going to leave you with this. That is exactly why what you just saw today is why Tony and Charlie and Noreen and all these people need to quit taking money from this freaking institutions, because these institutions are not in favor of Republicans. They are against Republicans. They give them that money to keep them quiet, to keep them shut up, to keep them in line, and to get a vote out of them every now and again when they need it. It needs to stop, and it needs to stop freaking now. I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.